Hey, what's going on, everybody? Alex with you here again. Thanks for dropping by. If you guys remember, probably what was it, maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, I showed you guys a video where I received these little core module sensors from the Chestnut company as a way. I think initially it was like kind of like a competition or something, to where the Chestnut company wanted people to utilize these little sensors here to make their own chess pieces for, at that time, I believe it was the Chestnut Air. It was before the Chestnut Pro came out. So anyhow, these little core modules have been sitting around in my drawer here for quite a long time until I got it in my head that I finally want to be able to make some chess pieces. And in this video, I'm going to kind of show you what probably you shouldn't do. One of the reasons why I got this idea is there's actually this Australian YouTuber, Adventures of a Chessnut. He seems to be like a pretty cool guy, and he also reviews the Chessnut Air, Chessnut Pro, and Chessnut Evo. So if you guys want like more information and maybe like somebody else's perspective on these products, I've watched some of his videos. He seems pretty cool guy, I guess. But yeah, so I was watching one of his videos not that long ago, and he was trying to do the same thing. Essentially, he ordered like several batches of these little sensors, which I think they cost somewhere around $40. You can just order, honestly, as many as you would like. Initially, when I got these, my main idea was I was going to make like a second set of chess pieces for the Chessnut Air. Back then, I don't even think we had the Chessnut Pro released yet, so I wanted to make some kind of pieces for the Chessnut Air that would just look different, unique, unusual. And although I kind of sort of failed in my attempt to make some because I didn't make a video about it because I failed so miserably. Yeah, I tried to do some kind of resin pouring and stuff. I bought a bunch of like this weird rubbery impression material, and I tried to take impressions of the existing Chestnut Air pieces and then flow in this like resin that I had to previously mix. But the problem is my impression material had like a hole at the bottom, so it would like leak out all over the table and stuff. It was just a messy process, and then the resin would take like 3 days to cure, so it's just like a big nightmare, Then I had an idea. Well, why don't I 3D print pieces? Because that sounds like something that a 3D printer can probably do without a problem. But I didn't have a 3D printer. I didn't really wanted to get into that. I had a friend who does have 3D printers, and we're still sort of in the process of getting that done. But I finally decided I'm going to make some chess pieces for my Chestnut Pro. Now, by making them, I was actually going to take an existing chess set. Here's a pawn, for example, and essentially, I was going to drill a hole in it and put these pieces in there. Okay, so it seems like the idea is pretty straightforward. Take off the felt on the bottom, then drill a hole in the center, because you're not going to drill right through the felt. I mean, I guess you could, but you're not going to have that felt in the end, so you might as well just take it off. And then put the sensor in. You know, you have to have a big enough drill, I guess, to drill a big enough hole in here so that the sensor can fit. And then you have to, while you're drilling, you have to make sure you don't drill too deep into the chess piece, so that way, you know, you don't run the risk of making a hole on the other side of the chess piece, I guess. So you would need some kind of a measurement. So on paper, it seemed like a pretty good idea. And so I decided to do it. And in this video, I'm going to kind of show you what I did and also sort of tell you why you probably shouldn't do it. To be honest with you, that's why there's pros that make these chess pieces. And also, an interesting thing is, if you watch some of the videos from the guy, the Adventures of the Chessnut, he mentioned that he ordered from this website. If I can find a link, I'll put it in the description below. But he found a website, and he either asked them, or maybe they already had it in their sort of in their options menu, to where they basically created chess pieces for him, and they already pre-drilled the holes the right size for the Chessnut, which was fantastic. And then in his video, he gets the chess pieces, but the felt comes separately. So like it's as easy as basically buying the sensors, ordering the chess set that you want, and then getting some glue or some epoxy and putting the pieces in there, and then also gluing the felt. I mean, that's it, easy, super easy. There's really not much that's probably the best approach, and that honestly, that's probably the approach that I would have chosen kind of looking back. But yeah. And another thing I want to mention is that I personally love the Chestnut Air and I love the Chestnut Pro. I like the Chestnut Pro, as I mentioned before, for the fact that it's a tournament size board, and the pieces on that board are relatively big size. So, but one of the things that I probably would want to see on like the Chestnut Company, if you're ordering the Chestnut Pro, you'd want to have maybe a larger variety of different chess pieces for people that are looking to create variety in those particular chess sets, kind of similar to what the DGT does on some of their more expensive boards. You can have the ability to pay a little bit extra if you wanted to just get one of the DGT, like the Bluetooth board or something, and then you can order a chess set that sort of going to be one that you might like to play on. So DGT, I believe, sells like that plastic ones, but then they have like higher up pricing. They have some really nice wooden chess sets. I think the Chessnut Company should definitely think about doing that, because they could also maybe partner with some of these companies that make the chess pieces. I mean, it doesn't take much for a company that makes the chess pieces to drill the right hole for these if they know the dimensions of the sensors. And then, I mean, they're already drilling a hole in here to put a weight, so why not? But yeah, let me just zoom in the camera. One of the things that I want to mention is the chess set that I've chosen to do this with. The way that I went about it, okay, I went to Home Depot and I bought this big drill, okay? And then I had a small drill. So I had a small drill bit and a big drill bit. And I thought, yeah, it should be enough. So I drilled a hole, and this is one of the pieces, but I've already done a lot of the other pieces. Drilled a hole with a small one right in the center, and then went in with the big one and started drilling. But what I realized is that if there's a big discrepancy between the small bit and then the really big drill bit, it'll actually potentially like cause a crack in your chess piece to occur. So what you need to do is, or what you don't need to do, honestly, don't follow anything that I said here, because you're going to be unhappy with the result most likely. But I went back to Home Depot and I bought drill bits one step down, all the way down to the very, so I bought like 6 different drill bits that were of different thickness, just bigger, kind of in a stepwise fashion. So I drilled it with a small one, then I went with a slightly bigger one, slightly bigger one, slightly bigger one, and I think after 6 or so drill bits, I got to the size finally that's going to accommodate the sensors. Okay, one of the things that I didn't realize is that these sensors are pretty big. They don't look big, but if you look at a pawn, you have to drill a hole that's pretty big, okay? And that's what we're going to do in this video here. I'm just going to kind of run you guys through every step of the way that I've done, and we're just going to sort of work with this particular pawn, and I'll show you how I'll put this particular sensor into this pawn. I was utilizing the Chessnut Air board. I had my phone connected to the boards, and I had the Chessnut application open. Once I connected, I put in board editor, so I would know exactly which little core module belongs to which piece. So I set them all up, so that way I wouldn't mistake and put the wrong module in the wrong chess piece, because that would be kind of bad, I guess. But anyways, so that's that. That's why I had the board. And yeah, let me just kind of show you what was going on. Let me show you how I did it. So here we go. We got my pawn right over here. Now this pawn here is one of the pawns that belong to the Dubrovnik chess set, I believe. Yeah, this was one of my favorite chess sets. Actually, I got this from Royal Chess Mall. This was the chess set that it came unweighted, so that was a kind of a sort of a reason why I chose this one as well, because unweighted chess piece doesn't actually have a little piece of metal on the inside of this, And so that way you don't have to drill through metal and you don't have to worry about having any complications. Honestly, it seemed at the time like the right way to do it. But another part of something I wanted to mention to you guys, that even the chess pieces that have the little piece of weight inside of them, one of the interesting things that I've learned by watching the adventures of a chess noob is that apparently you can submerge a chess piece in a really, really hot water. You would have to saran wrap as he did it so that you don't damage the wood itself. But apparently if you submerge it, then the glue that's holding the little metal piece inside will like soften up and cause the metal to come out. I haven't tried it, but that's something he mentioned. So that, yeah, it might be something of an option to where any particular chess set you have, not just this particular design, but any one of them, as long as you find a way to knock out safely the metal inside of them, then you should be good. Anyways, so here we are. We got this really, really nice felt on the underside that's been glued into this mahogany stained pawn. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to I did this with my nail mostly, and just sort of break this off. Now it's glued in there pretty well, so as you guys can see, it's not really coming off really well. Part of it did, part of it didn't. But then what I bought at Home Depot was this sort of 100 grade sandpaper, and all I did is basically kind of go through and do this. Okay. Also, if the sound in this video kind of sounds a little bit bad or worse than usually, it's because my current microphone is not working properly, so I'll have to use the internal mic from the camera. So I'm sorry for that. Anyways, as we are sort of doing this, you'll see that the felt is gonna be removed. The more you do it, the more of the felt will be removed. Also, because I'm doing it on a flat surface here, it more or less sort of creates a very flat surface on the other side of the pawn. Another thing I want to mention is that sometimes it seems to me like when they are making these chess pieces, the inside part here might actually be sort of depressed in a little bit. So there's kind of a little bit of a concavity in the surface. And I sort of realized that with many of the pieces that I was sandpapering, because the felt on the inside here doesn't like remove until you remove a bunch of the periphery sort of. And then, so basically I didn't necessarily want to remove a bunch of wood, because that could potentially change the height of my chess piece, and I didn't want to go that far. All I really needed was that most of the outside perimeter, like right as you see here, has the felt removed, because that's where I'm going to be gluing the new felt on. So that's probably going to be enough for me. Now, after this, what I did is I'm going to show you how I drilled the hole in this. Okay, so this is what I had as far as the size of my first drill bit, and then I couldn't find my other drill bits. For some reason they got lost, maybe in the move or something, and this was the other drill bit that I bought at that time. So I thought, boy, there's a big difference, but you know, if I have this in the center where I need it, then I could follow up with this. But I went back to Home Depot and bought all the different ones as far as the sizing of it, to where basically I got all the previous ones to this, and kind of there's a little bit of step between the smallest one and the slightly bigger one, but it worked for me. And I found this little thing right over here, just like a piece of metal, I don't know, a hook from a tent or something, to where I could, after I did my first drill, I could go in there and in the hole and then measure like how much it goes in, so that way I can compare it to the height of my sensors. So that's what we're going to be doing right now, and hopefully we're going to do it okay. This is where my wife might come in and say, "What are you doing?" Okay. So I'm going to just kind of take this and I'm going to center it in my hand best way I can. And I'm going to make a hole as straight as possible right in the center of this. Alright. So the hole's probably not big enough, honestly. I didn't realize another thing is that you gotta make a pretty big hole. So that's not even big enough. You gotta make a pretty deep hole in there. Okay. As much as I try to, I think this is gonna be pretty good. Yeah. So now we got a big enough hole. As much as I try to do it in the center, I'm still, see, I guess my camera doesn't want to function properly. I kind of got it in the center, and I hope that's going to be good. But this whole pitch and yaw and angulation, because this can be angled sideways and everything, so it's really hard to make sure you get it straight. I probably should have had one of those machines where you just crank it and it goes straight down, but the problem with that, like my dad has one, you have to find a way to like secure the chess piece properly so that while you're doing that, it doesn't move around on you, because then if it does move just a little bit, it'll still create a problem. So you almost have to put it in some kind of a vise or something to where you secure a chess piece properly. Well, I didn't do that. I thought I'd just kind of wing it and do this part. So anyway, so right now what we're going to do is, this hole is obviously going to be too small for the sensor at this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly run through all these, and hopefully we're going to end up with a successful chess piece. So here we are. We're just going to grab the next one. And like I said in this video, please don't try this at home. You might ruin your chess pieces. Alright, so now all we have to do, or all I did in this case, just made that hole just a little bit bigger. There's going to be a lot of dust here, and I'll have to clean up this real quick before my wife comes downstairs. So this is just a little bit bigger. This is a pretty quick process. Now when you have to do it with all the 34 chess pieces, it's pretty long. Pretty time consuming. Okay, just a little bit bigger this one. The key is also have to kind of hold on to the chess piece, because it will spin if it all catches. Okay, we're about halfway through it. Well, we're pretty far along. Okay, we're doing okay. But it's just scary, because when you start drilling into it, you hear that wood cracking as it sort of grabs onto it, and it's scary because you think your chess piece is about to just like crack in half. Okay, so yeah, I don't think the Adventures of a Chess Noob guy was this crazy. So, anyways, so here we are, and this is second to last. Now, I kind of thought that this might be big enough hole, but it's really got to be the biggest one in order for this to work. Okay, last one. So last one's kind of too big, but whatever. Alright, so it should be good. Okay, now that it's the right size, you can see how big this is now. I already know that this sensor belongs to a dark pawn. Otherwise, at this point, I would have probably turned on my Chessnut Air, and I would have connected it, make sure that this was a dark pawn, and I would have basically made sure that it's not some other sensor belonging to another piece. But now that the hole is big enough, it's just big enough for this to go down, as you could see. Goes in there flush, see? So there's no, there's this piece, this little sensor thing, has to go in there all the way. If it protrudes ever so slightly, every time you play, it could potentially be damaging the sensor. But this sensor goes in there very flush, and it kind of goes in there as if it doesn't even want to come out, which might be, no, there it is. Okay, so now that we got that done, the one thing that I was using is I was using this clear epoxy Gorilla. It sets up in 5 minutes and has 3,300 psi, and it's water resistant, so it seems okay. I guess the only thing that you have to keep an eye on with any type of glue is if the glue, once it sets up, does it change dimensions, because it's going to be something to pay attention to, because some of this stuff will change dimensions. If it expands, it could potentially crack your chess piece, but This seems to be working fine. Let me just get a plate and clean this up real quick. Another thing I wanted to mention is that on top of all the drills that I got this extra fat one right here. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but because the little modules for the pawns are kind of just straight down, and they have this sort of a kind of a pointy end here, but the core modules for the major chess pieces on the bottom right over here by the base, it expands, and so if we drill a hole that's just this, they won't fit. That bottom part will not prevent it from basically sliding in there. So I bought this little thing, and I just kind of went in there and kind of made the front part of it even bigger. So that way, at least on like the other pieces, not the pawns. But it's not necessary for the pawns. I still wanted to sort of mention what else I got. Okay, so now that I got my epoxy opened up, I'm just going to go ahead and you got to sort of break this tip here and then squeeze it. You have the hardener and so there's two solutions in here in this sort of convenient package. I might have put out too much because for one chess piece I might not need it, but then you sort of mix it up real good. Once you mix it up, that's when it starts setting, and you have about a 5-minute working window. I'm using a pencil because I will have to throw it away afterwards. You have to use something, but because once it all sets up on these instruments and everything, it's just, there's only so much you can do. But yeah, now that I sort of got this all cleaned up, at least this was my approach, and like I said, I'm not very handy with things, but I'm just gonna sort of go ahead and coat the walls to begin with, and I'll probably add a little bit more, so that way there's just a little bit more of it. Now if you add too much, once you put your sensor in there, it's probably going to spew out. But this is kind of a pretty straightforward, and then I sort of slide my sensor in there. As I'm sliding, I realize there's so limited space, and some of it did come out a little bit, so what I do is I just kind of did this with my chess pieces because I didn't really have anything to clean up the resin. And then I guess you let it just sit like this for 5 minutes or so. So I'm just gonna set it to the side. So kind of straightforward. Now I went to Michael's store, also next to Home Depot here, and I bought these brown ones. They had different color felt, and I bought the brown ones. These set me back, I believe, like 49 cents a piece, and I bought 4 of them. But I also bought a slightly bigger felt that was a little bit thicker. And I think, but the problem is the thickness of the felt has to be somewhat thin, because if it's too thick, it could potentially put us in a situation where the sensor might be just far enough from the board not to be picked up by the board. We don't want to have that. That's why most of these electronic chess pieces, their felt is somewhat on the thin side. So, and it seems to make sense, like you're not really losing out too much as far as like the way that the thin felt feels versus the thick felt. If there was no sensor in a chess piece and I just wanted to refelt, I'd probably go with a slightly thicker one. But in this case, I think we're going to be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a little piece, and while the epoxy is still setting up, we'll just go ahead and put the chess piece on there. Now, I suppose if you have a streamlined approach and you could be putting these chess pieces right on this felt without cutting them, but in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and cut a little piece. Here we go, just big enough square for us to be able to put the pawn on there. That should be pretty good. That should be pretty straight. And so what we're going to do is I'm just going to carefully use some of this resin. And now this is sort of where you don't want to overdo it, because if you put too much of it, then it's going to all come out the side and be a pretty big mess. But let's just try it. I haven't actually tried this part, but we got our pawn. We sort of just glue it on like this. Now, as far as felting chess pieces, I did a video like a long time ago, and I received a lot of negative feedback because because I didn't really teach anybody how to refelt chess pieces. And I've had some people comment just saying basically what they would do is just do this. Then once the felt sort of cures up, all they have to do is either grab like a X-Acto knife or something, or maybe get really, really sharp like tiny scissors for like nails or something, and then just cut around. But you'd have to wait for this chess piece to cure up, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to sort of wait for a minute for this to cure up, and then we'll cut around it and see what the final result's going to look like. Now, while we were waiting for this to set up, I'm going to kind of show you a couple of things as far as this is actually the very last chess piece that I'm completing this, just for the sake of making this video, but I've already installed all of the sensors into the other chess pieces, and I'm going to kind of share with you guys why after doing that. I don't think any of you guys should really approach this without, you know, really thinking that you might end up with some broken chess pieces. But by the way, this was the brand of the 100 grit sandpaper that I used for all of them, in fact. But yeah, so for the most part, I got pretty good outcomes. You know, these are like light pawns here, and big pieces too. They came out pretty well. I have not felted any pieces, so this is the very first one that I'm actually felting. One thing I realized is when I was trying to make a hole in the knights, that apparently the knight here between the base and the knight actually is glued in, like it's I think it's epoxied or something, because when I put pressure, like sort of rotational pressure from the drill, one of the knights ended up like just popping off. This whole base part just popped off, and so I had to like utilize epoxy to re-glue the knight back on. And now that I re-glued it back on, it's not really a problem, because I mean 3300 psi, that's strong enough to really be as strong as the rest of the wood. But what are some of the things that some of the problems that I incurred while I was doing this? Well, for one is that every one of these chess pieces, the bottoms is different. Some of them, the felt came out really easy. Some of them, the felt really struggled. And once again, is they're not all flat. So some of them, they're kind of concave towards the middle. So I had to sort of decide up to what point I would have to sandpaper these, but that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that you see most of the big chess pieces, I haven't had any issue with them whatsoever because they're big. And so when I would, as you guys can probably see, that I tried to make the hole right in the center on most of them, but some of them came off slightly off the center. But because most of these pieces sort of big enough to accommodate things, it wasn't really a problem. Oh, by the way, I started off putting these sensors in here, and then the epoxy would get on my fingers, and then I would end up like touching the chess pieces for some reason, and now I have like a little bit of epoxy that cured on the surfaces of my chess pieces, and it's not very attractive because I like to have nice smooth chess pieces, and now some of them so be careful. Even if you end up ordering chess sets with already pre-made holes and you're planning to glue it in, watch that you don't touch it with your fingers, the glue, and then touch the rest of the pieces, because then it's going to be really hard to remove that, because you know it's really nice to have smooth chess pieces, not like chess pieces covered by epoxy. But the biggest problem, okay, that I realized this, and I said here honestly, God honest truth, I made a bunch of these holes, and then when I was start to make a hole in the pawn, okay, I'd make the small one, and sometimes I would be pretty straight from here, but somehow I would kind of sort of end up angling it ever so slightly to the side. And because these pawns they're kind of wide in the base here, as you can see, but as we transition to this part, they get really thin and really small here. So it's not really a problem in the base, but the problem is these sensors, as we've seen already, they extend out like into the neck essentially, because they're pretty long, okay? It would be nice if the sensors weren't so big, weren't so long. We wouldn't have to make the holes so big and so deep into the chess piece. Because what I realized is, and I'm going to show you guys, and I was literally sitting here in the corner of the room getting ready to cry. I told my wife yesterday, I said, I feel like I had the most disappointing day, because it took me so long to prepare all this stuff, but if it was slightly off center, where in this case it is quite off center, but I guess that's where the drill wanted to go, and it was hard to drill right in the center because the drill kept kind of coming off the side. Then we have this, you see, right over here, very unattractive. And although this is actually partly filled, yeah, well, I could add a little bit more because I see there's just a tiny bit of irregularity in the surface. I filled this with epoxy afterwards, but there's a hole, and it's not a problem when the drill was small. But as I got the drill bigger and bigger towards the very end, I started seeing the hole appear, and I was like, oh, whatever curse word you want to insert in this part. I was like, I don't want to curse on the video, but the honest truth of it, I was cursing a lot, and I was like, that I just ruined a chess set, and so I was like, what am I gonna do now? That's not even the worst of the problem. The worst of the problem is that I'm going to show you here. Yeah, see, some of the other pieces, it might be kind of hard to see, but broke through here too. And look at that. And so it's so thin here. The material's so thin that now I have to get some more epoxy. Essentially, I might do it now. Well, it's already hardened. I might get some more epoxy here in a second and flow it in here. Otherwise, it's a problem. There's a hole in my chess piece, and how am I going to cover this up? I'd have to get some kind of paint or something. I don't even know now. But no, big problem. Big problem. Yes, where my chess piece at? Yeah, look at this, guys. Went in and it created a hole to start off with that was like small like this, and then I went with the bigger drill bit, and it just busted this whole thing out. And it's like, okay, this looks ugly. This. I've flown so much resin in here, and what I'm planning to do is once it sort of fully cures, I'm going to rebuild this chess piece. I will actually use some kind of maybe like a putty resin or something. I have some resin that I could get from work and basically cure it. I could set it and make it exactly how the rest of the chess piece is, and then maybe even add some coloring and color it. I could fix this, but this is a big problem. This is the reason why I was like so upset yesterday. It's just the big pieces. None of the big pieces had any problems. The pawns, it's like, shh. So, moral of the story is, guys, leave the drilling of the holes to the professionals. So if there are companies out there that can actually drill these holes for you, and you want to glue the pieces in, let them have issues and then have to remake the pawns or whatever. Don't drill the hole by yourself, because then I can't send this back to Royal Chess Mall and be like, hey, yo, my pawn for some reason has a hole in it. They'll be like, there's a hole in here. What did you do? So it's not like, I guess I could order some like replacement pawns, but the problem too is sometimes with different chess sets, like you can't really order a replacement pawn if a chess set's very exclusive. And anyways, you might have to like order a whole new chess set. Well, this is mostly set up. I'll give it a couple of more minutes, and we'll sort of finish this off. Honestly, I'm upset to even retell you this, because you don't realize how frustrated I was with. The idea was pretty good. All on paper was fine until you get in there, something goes slightly wrong, and then it ends up kind of ruining your chess pieces. And yeah, it shouldn't be so negative. You can always order other chess pieces. You can always get more sensors, but I'm going to use these little nail scissors here, so we're going to carefully just sort of cut around the periphery of this chess piece. This is what a lot of people on Facebook tell me, well, not Facebook, on YouTube, they told me that they did with their chess sets, and hopefully it'll work. Kind of. Yeah, it's really raggedy right now, so what I'm going to probably need to do is just kind of, well, it's not bad. Most of the time, when you get the chess pieces that are made, as we've seen many of the other chess pieces that are reviewed, the felt actually is a little bit narrower, sort of, than the actual chess piece, so you don't see it sort of on the outside of the chess piece. But yeah, it's not bad. I went with brown because there was other colors. I could have gone with pink, or like they even had some really bizarre colors like gold, sparkling gold and stuff, but those had some like rubber in it. But Yeah, let me show you guys.
Well, yeah, not terrible, not terrible. I think that if I worked at it a little bit more, um, we could have had to where we would be able to hide the, because you see it's like sort of slightly irregular on the periphery as far as the felt. So maybe if I could get sharper nail scissors and just kind of work at it just a little bit more to sort of get rid of some of the small nuances. But yeah, so here we go. Now this pawn is a chestnut approved pawn, I guess.
All I'm gonna need to do now, I guess, since I've already felted one chess piece, is basically cut up the rest of my felt blocks and into small squares like we've done with that one, and then just mix up a bunch of epoxy. We should be able to work fast, relatively fast. Just set them the same way we did, and then cut around them. So long story short, yeah, don't do this. Don't drill pieces in there. It kind of makes you gain an appreciation for how sort of careful the chess pieces are have to be made, especially when they drill the bottom part, because this hole isn't even all that big compared to the fact that like a lot of these chess pieces they have to make a really wide hole for the weight on the inside of these chess pieces, and then it's consider like how precise they have to make those drillings in order to make sure that the chess piece doesn't crack. Because I've seen some of the holes they have to make for these chess pieces on the underside, and it's pretty wide. Yeah, don't drill your chess pieces by all means. I don't make this video to recommend. I just sort of made this video to share in this journey, in this adventure. Yeah, for the most part, I succeeded, I guess, if it wasn't for a couple of pawns that are now showing holes in them. Everything else is okay. But I'm not satisfied with that, so now I have to find a way to replace a couple of those pawns, and hope that if I do find a way to replace them, that I would also need additional little sensor modules, and then I would be okay. I guess I could be able to finish this. But would I recommend for anybody to do this now that I've done it myself? No, by no means. I might make an update and see, kind of show you guys how I end up repairing those pawns, or how I end up ordering new ones, I guess. Anyways, hopefully you guys have enjoyed watching this sort of a hands-on video. I actually enjoyed making the video more than I enjoyed doing all the drilling on all the pieces, because that was definitely a lot of work. I was sitting here for like hours making sure that I do a good job, and then in the end I went to bed. I was like, this today was so disappointing. Thanks for watching my video, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think about my sort of shiny work, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, bye bye.